Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reaction to the Monaco Grand Prix. And what a terrible race that was, with a very happy ending. We've had loads of content across the channel this weekend covering all things F1, F2 and F3. If you haven't checked out the F2, check out the F2. Because if you want to see how to put on a absolutely incredible race around Monaco, F2 did that. So watch the F2 race, or if you can't bother to watch the F2 race, go watch my reactions to the F2 race. That's also available on the channel. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff, of course. Let's get into this, and I feel like I'm trying to think of an analogy to sum up the Monaco Grand Prix. And the closest thing I can think of is, imagine when you were a kid and you're in school and you're just having an awful day and it's just bad and you hate school and it's dragging on and you don't want to be there. But when you get home, your mum goes, "Oh, we haven't got anything in the cupboard. We're going to have a takeaway tonight." That's what the Monaco Grand Prix was. A very long time of boring nothingness, but at the end, that lovely, satisfactory feeling. That was the Monaco Grand Prix. Let's get into all of it then. Starting at the start, Charles Leclerc on pole, Piastri alongside, and that's how it ended. Thank you everybody for watching. No, I'm only joking. I'll talk a bit more then. Max Verstappen, championship leader, was in P6. The interesting thing about the grid is the Haas cars. Both of them were disqualified from qualifying due to a technical infringement. Now, initially they said they were going to start from the pit lane, but they do start on the grid, but at the back of the grid. Hülkenberg in 19th, Magnussen 20th. They were saying apparently this was just like a lack of communication between the legal team and the technical team or something. I don't know what happened here, but there you go, they're at the back nonetheless. As for tyres, it's pretty much a 50-50 split really. I tried to write down who was on what tyres, but it took so long I missed it. All we know though, the top four start the race on the mediums, so that is Leclerc, Piastri, Sainz and Norris. The top people on the hards were Russell, Verstappen and Hamilton. As lights go out, it's a good start from Leclerc, an even better start from Carlos Sainz, who pulls alongside Piastri but is not able to get past as Piastri blocks him off there. But they do have a little bit of contact coming out of Sandoval, which gives Carlos Sainz a puncture. Leclerc able to keep the lead. Then we have a red flag, and I think a red flag for a puncture? That's surely a bit too far. And then they cut to Sergio Perez's car, which has no tyres, no front wing and no rear wing on it. And I go, oh, I think something's happened here. So there is a huge crash up the hill in Monaco that included Perez, Magnussen and Hülkenberg. Magnussen, what basically happened on the replay, Magnussen trying to go round the outside on the hill. For me, the gap was never there. You could say Perez should move across to the left, and the replay does show Perez looking in the mirror just before the crash. So I don't know if there was enough reaction time from Perez to see Magnussen. Secondly, he had Hülkenberg to the left. So if I'm pointing blame, I'm pointing blame at Magnussen here, but I have seen a lot of other people to see it differently. It's one of those crashes that you can see from a million points of view. But yeah, Magnussen goes out the outside of Perez. There's no room. The two of them come together. As Perez is spinning, he then collects Hülkenberg. Both Haas cars out of the race, as well as Perez. Zhou was behind all three of them, but manages to kind of just make his way through really slowly and doesn't have anything there. That's what brought out the red flag. Awful news for the Haas team. Awful news for me. I had Magnussen and Hülkenberg on my fantasy team. They had minus 15 points each for being disqualified from qualifying. This is another minus 20 points. This is killer. That's minus 70 points from my fantasy team. I've been depressed ever since. Anyway, that wasn't the only crash on lap 1 either, because we have to go to just before the tunnel. Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, the lovely, lovely teammates at Alpine. Just before the tunnel, Ocon decides to do a dive bomb down the inside, clips the front of Piastri's car, forces himself high up in the air, then comes crashing down and destroys his floor. Gasly said he has a bit of damage, but doesn't seem to have that much. Ocon's car would not be able to be fixed before the red flag finished, so Ocon is out of the race. A few other things on that Ocon collision there. The stewards found Ocon to be fully in blame for that, and he has been given a 5-place grid penalty for Canada. Initially, he was given a 10-second time penalty, and he wasn't in the race. So he's now been given a 5-place grid penalty, which is an interesting one. So if we think back to China, Fernando Alonso was given a 10-second time penalty in the sprint, despite him not being in the race, and they just left it at that. He was not given a grid penalty. So a bit more inconsistency there from the stewards, but to be fair, in China, I thought that penalty was harsh anyway, so I'm not too fussy about that one. The big saving grace here for Carlos Sainz is that when the race is restarted, it is not restarted in the order that it finished, it is restarted from the qualifying order. So Sainz, who had that penalty, pulled alongside and was last, now gets to go back to 3rd place. Interestingly, though, just before we go on to the restart, the crash between Magnussen and Perez and Hülkenberg, the stewards have deemed there was no further action for that. They are deeming that as racing incident. Because I thought for sure that Kevin Magnussen race ban was going to be coming in, so he needs 2 penalty points for that. But no, they've said racing incident. They are not handing out any penalty and no penalty points either. So all drivers getting away with that one in terms of penalty points and repercussions. So the next interesting thing to talk about in this race, and trust me, there isn't many interesting things to talk about in this race. All the interesting things happened within the first 2 laps. As it is a red flag, we have a chance to change tyres. But of course, we still need to use both sets of tyres. But those guys who started on the mediums, who are the top 4, can now switch to the hards and go the entire race without having to pit, which shows a massive failing of Pirelli. I think Pirelli have been massively showed up today. We've known for a while that Pirelli aren't very good, but this more than ever has proven that. You know, when you have drivers who can go from lap 2 to lap 78 on a set of medium tyres, you know there might be an issue there. So yeah, lots of guys now trying to go out throughout the rest of the race on one set of tyres, including both Ferraris and both McLarens. We start again, but without the Hasses, without Ocon and without Perez. Leclerc gets away well once again, and Piastri stays in P2. And then, for the next 72 laps, everyone just manages their tyres and goes massively, massively slow. For the majority of the race, they were between 3 and 6 seconds off the regular race pace. And for some drivers, you have to question their thought process. Mostly Yuki Tsunoda. So Yuki Tsunoda, by the end of the race, was over a minute behind Lewis Hamilton. I think he was even lapped by Lewis Hamilton, who was the car next to him. Surely it's better for him to just do a pit stop and go all out than be a minute behind. We know Yuki Tsunoda's pace is not that to be a minute behind Lewis Hamilton. And at one point he lost like 20 seconds in a few laps, just because they were desperately trying to keep those tyres alive for the end of the race. And you know, I know you lose like 20 seconds from a pit stop, but we saw a lot in this race, guys pitting, and less than 10 laps later, they were back to exactly where they were. So I really think some strategies here got it massively wrong. And I know race position, and that's a big, important thing. And track position is important, as we also saw later on in this race. But for someone like Yuki Tsunoda to be a minute off the pace of the car in front of him, I think you got to think there, maybe go a bit faster and just do a bloody pit stop. But there you go. Where are we? Bottas actually does a pit stop on lap 16 for the hards. And then he had the fastest lap for like the majority of the race. Valtteri Bottas on the hards was one of the fastest guys on track. And everyone now is just competing to see who can complete the race in the slowest time. Lance Stroll pits on lap 43. So we've jumped now from lap 16 to lap 43 in my notes. That shows how much has gone on here. But this is actually fantastic teamwork from the Aston team, especially that of Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso playing the Kevin Magnussen role here, really slowing down the rest of the pack, making sure that Stroll had that gap so that when he pit for those new hards, he could come out in front of Alonso, in front of everyone in front of him, and just go for it and try and get those final points playing positions. A lot of pressure put on Lance Stroll, but a lot of belief from the Aston team for Lance to be the guy to deliver for them. Perfectly choreographed by Fernando Alonso. Great job from him. But yeah, Stroll now is the guy to take Aston and get some points from this Monaco Grand Prix. 7 laps later, Stroll hits the wall and has a puncture, has to pit again for soft tyres, and is at the back. Well done, Stroll. All of Alonso's work for nothing. Now comes probably the most interesting part of the race, where Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen pit, and they're in a little gang of their own. Really, it's the top 4, and about 17 seconds later, it is Russell, Verstappen and Hamilton, the guys who started on the hard tyres and then did the restart on the mediums. So they're all in their little space of their own. Hamilton, as we said, has that massive gap to Tsunoda, so he can afford to pit. Verstappen then takes that opportunity to pit, comes out ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and then has that pace to try and catch up to the back of George Russell. Further back, Bottas has done an overtake, everyone. I think it was the first overtake since lap 2, and it came on lap 54. He overtook Logan Sargent. Now, Stroll, I've already taken the mick out of him in this race, but he did 2 very good overtakes. Aided, of course, by the fact that he was on better tyres, but nonetheless, very good. Overtakes Zhou through the tunnel, and then gets Sargent into Sandevot. 2 overtakes within about a lap of each other on lap 58 for P14. Well done, Stroll. Sargent pits on lap 59. And on lap 62, Max Verstappen has caught the back of George Russell. So Verstappen pits on lap 53, and 9 laps later, he is back to where he started on fresher tyres. And what this means now is George Russell, who's been maintaining his tyres for the entire race because he's trying to get a set of mediums to the end, he now has to push a little bit. And what this means for the ramifications for the rest of the race is because he's now pushing, he's gaining on Norris. Now, Norris has been trying to get a gap between him and Russell, so at the end, maybe he can pit for softs, catch up to Sainz again, and really pressure him for that final podium position. Because Russell has to defend from Verstappen now, that gap is gone. Because if they pit, they will come out behind Russell and come out behind Verstappen. I thought we were going to have something really interesting here where Verstappen would get past Russell relatively easy and start chasing down the top 4, but here again, the Red Bull's just not working to perfection, and it's Monaco, and these cars are too big and too heavy. Verstappen wasn't able to get past Russell and had to be stuck behind him here. Russell on mediums that have been on his car since lap 2. So, big issue here with the tyres, but there you go. Towards the end, on lap 73 of 78, Charles Leclerc starts to pull away a bit and ends up with like a gap about 8 seconds between him and Piastri in P2. Sainz tries to pressure Piastri a little bit to try and make him make a mistake, but he's able to stick it in there. Zhou pits on lap 73 for the softs. I thought he was going to go try and get fastest lap. I don't know why, because he was at the back, but yeah, it didn't work either. We crossed the line. And Charles Leclerc has won the Monaco Grand Prix. He's finally done it. His 3rd pole position and his 1st win here in Monaco. One of the best radio messages you're ever going to hear. It's up there with Mark Webber's 1st win for me in terms of just pure emotion over the radio. You can tell how much it means to him and like everyone from Monaco. Really happy there, and just so much love and joy from everyone for Charles Leclerc's win. Also, what this means is I think he's only about 23 points behind Max Verstappen, so we might actually have a championship battle on our hands here, which is shocking stuff, I know. Oscar Piastri comes home in P2. Fantastic from Piastri. I think obviously the light is going to be on Charles Leclerc this weekend because he's done fantastically well, but Oscar Piastri, in just his 2nd Monaco Grand Prix, was less than a 10th behind Leclerc for pole, and stuck with him for basically the entire race. We talked all the way through last year about how Piastri's big thing that he struggled with was tyre management. This was a race all about tyre management, and he managed it really well to bring it home in P2 for McLaren. Sainz completes the double podium for Ferrari. Norris comes home in P4. Russell is 5th. Great job from Russell to make those mediums last, but as I said, those mediums shouldn't last. That's Pirelli's fault. Verstappen has to settle for P6. I mean, good points for him at a track where the Red Bull just wasn't working. I got a hair in my mouth. There you go. Lewis Hamilton is in 7th. Yuki Tsunoda is in 8th, over a minute behind, but yet again, good points for the Racing Bills. Alexander Albon is in 9th, the first points for the Williams team. Pierre Gasly in 10th, his first point of the season. Ricciardo 11th, Bottas 12th. Stroll eventually comes home in P13. Have I missed Alonso? I think I have. Alonso was 11th. Yeah, Alonso was 11th, Ricciardo was 12th, Stroll comes home in 14th, Bottas was 13th, Sargent 15th, Zhou 16th, and then 4 DNFs. They are Ocon, Hulkenberg, Perez, and Magnussen. So there you go. That's the Monaco Grand Prix. It wasn't very good, but the ending was very nice. I'm going to go watch the Indy 500 now, where they drive quicker than 20 miles an hour. We'll be back tomorrow for all things driver ratings, which I think there's going to be some very high highs and some very low lows in that one. So make sure you come back for that tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll have a video coming out here on the channel, and I'll let you in on what it's about. It's about Iron Man 2 and the Monaco scene within that film. So subscribe for that one. Apart from that, we'll see you next time. Let me know what you thought of the race. And until next time, have a good one. Goodbye.